life expectancy has actually been going down since 2013. Pharmaceutical science has not been able to cure a single one of the major metabolic, autoimmune, or chronic conditions that we are likely to contract during our lifetimes. The NHS is the vehicle through which public money is shoveled into private hands. Their incentive is to keep you sick for as long as possible without killing you. And what do we see? A massive rise in chronic diseases that can last 10, 20, 30 years. Singapore's system is a saleable alternative.
Hello and welcome to Resistance GB. I'm joined here today at the People's Reset down in Bath with Anthony Sammeroff. Anthony, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell people who you are.
Hi everyone, I'm Anthony Sammeroff. I guess I'm a manifestation of the one consciousness, just like you. Speaking to you, I'm kind of kidding. I'm a psychotherapist and I wrote this book, Big Pharma, Guess It Quacks Like a Duck. And I was here speaking about the pharmaceutical industry, the true cause of disease, which is very misunderstood today, and how we can maybe fix some of these problems both on the personal and the political level.
So what's wrong with the pharmaceutical industry? Is it not there to protect us and make us all feel fantastic?
Broadly speaking, drugs do not cure diseases. They're there to mitigate symptoms. The problem is, a lot of the time they mitigate symptoms while the patient gets sicker. And that would be okay if that's what was being sold to people. But we've all heard of the wonders of modern medicine and how we're living longer, happier lives because of it. But that's quite funny because according to official sources, life expectancy has actually been going down since 2013. People are living longer, maybe less so now, but they're living sicker. Alzheimer's disease is through the roof. Heart disease, diabetes, children are getting it now. You can be in a room, as I was yesterday, looking out at an audience, 1, 2, 3, you're going to get cancer, 1, 2, 3, you're going to get cancer, 1, 2, 3, you're going to get cancer, compared to 1 in 10 in the 70s. So if pharmaceutical science is so wonderful, why are so many people getting sick? Get this. Pharmaceutical science has not been able to cure a single one of the major metabolic, autoimmune, or chronic conditions that we are likely to contract during our lifetimes. But because also in mainstream medicine, we have this amazing thing called surgery or emergency medicine. If you get a cut, if you're in a car crash, if you need a skin graft because you were burnt, they're miracle workers, right? But the pharmaceutical industry is trying to hijack the success of emergency medicine so that it can claim great successes when all of the advances have been in trauma crisis care and nothing's really moved forward in terms of helping people get better. If you look at psychiatry, it's complete failure. Their own studies show that people who are on these drugs for a long time do worse than people who never took them in the first place. So the problem is not pharmaceutical medicine per se. There is a place for that, but it should be used to mitigate symptoms and comfort the patient while you do other things to help them get more healthy. It shouldn't be presented as a drug for every bug, a pill for every ill, an injection for every infection, radiation for every mutation, and when in doubt, cut it out.
What are the key drivers of sickness, illness, bad health?
This is a really interesting question, and you would think that they would want to investigate that, wouldn't you? I mean, America alone spends $4 trillion a year on healthcare. According to their own figures, 70% of diseases are lifestyle related. So you'd think they'd want to spend 70% of those resources preventing disease. But I would say the main risk factors are basically what comes into your body, what do you put in your mouth, what do you rub into your skin, what is the pollution that you're breathing, what's in the water you're drinking. Heavy metals are found in municipal water. Particles of deconstituted tampons are found in our drinking water. Pharmaceutical drugs are found in our drinking water. You'd think if they were really serious, they'd be wanting to look at things like this. If I could tell you a story, New Jersey, just across the Hudson River from New York, used to be a swamp. And every summer, mosquitoes would come over and infect everyone with dengue fever and with malaria, except for the rich people, of course. They just moved somewhere with a cooler climate. Now, New York did not solve its infectious disease problem by giving people a bunch of expensive pharmaceuticals. They literally drained the swamp. So when you're looking at illness, why are we not getting ill the same way that our grandparents did? Well, according to official sources, it's because we've got refrigeration, better nutrition, better access to cleaner water. You don't have a horse-drawn cart with horses pooping in the street, and then that washes into the river and gives everyone typhus. Things like that. People used to live in cold, damp flats. People were exchanging diseases and lived in poor conditions. What you really want to do is raise people's living standards, the quality of food that we eat. We don't want to be spraying this with pesticides, which then kill the bacteria, the beneficial bacteria in our body, which is necessary for us to process our food properly. Then you're getting nutritional deficiencies because your digestive system isn't working properly. We're part of the ecosystem. We're meant to live in a system and create a system that supports us to thrive. And to do that, we also need to support the system itself. It's amazing that we can think we can pour a bunch of poisons into the countryside and that this isn't going to come back on us. So if you ask me, main causes of disease: toxicity, nutritional deficiency. We don't have the same amount of minerals in the soil as we used to, and there weren't that many in the first place. Then you have stress, trauma, lack of social connection, and chronic muscle tension. These are the kind of things that if we looked at just preventing disease instead of treating preventable diseases, we'd save so much money on healthcare. The amount of money it takes to treat a person with diabetes or heart disease is phenomenal. For a small percentage of that money, we could run programs to get people together in a social environment to improve their habits together. And in my book, I document several instances of programs like this that ran, but most of them got shut down because they lost the private hospital's money. When they prevented heart disease and diabetes, they made less money.
Because they get paid for each treatment.
Right. We live in a system where everyone profits from sickness. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system.
Does the NHS contribute towards this? Because the NHS is essentially a 100% subsidy for medication.
Sure.
So essentially it means that if you get really, really sick, there's this sort of safety blanket there, and there are these people who supposedly will take care of you. But it doesn't incentivize you to take care of your own health because it's subsidized.
Right.
Do you think if we had a system where we had a free market and people had to pay for their own health insurance, that the health insurance might set guidelines to say, okay, you have to eat healthy or something like this, or we'll do a test on you every year to see whether you're generally healthy, and then we're going to price up your plan accordingly.
Right. So that's a really good question. It's definitely the case that the NHS is the vehicle through which public money is shoveled into private hands. It's meant to be a public system, but you're using public money to buy pharmaceutical drugs and mainstream treatments. And by doing that, they can sideline things in the alternative sphere, which may be more effective. So but here's another problem. See, if you give out free ice cream, people who don't like ice cream that much, like me, I like an ice cream, but I don't love it. I'll take an ice cream if it's free. People will consume more healthcare, consume more drugs that they don't need when it's free. So when you talk about insurance, that system isn't working too well in America, but that's not first of all, obviously, America's not a free market in healthcare. They're using insurance and Medicare and Medicaid to shovel public money into private hands.
With massive, massive regulation in the United States. So a lot of people say, oh, well, there's not that much public money going in. Still a lot of public money going in.
No, there's tons.
But they say, okay, but there's this private provision. However, the private provision is still regulated by government.
Correct. And you cannot, as a doctor, prescribe anything that's not pharmaceutical medicine or surgery. So even if you do know about herbal medicine or naturopathic solutions, you're not actually allowed to. But what I mean to say is America's system and the UK system aren't the only. Does everyone talk about that? Singapore spends only 60% of what we spend on healthcare, 25% of what America spends on healthcare. They live 6 years longer. They are much healthier, and they have a similar GDP to America. So why does everyone go, well, do you want American system? Why doesn't everyone go, do you want Singapore's system? Well, I'll take it over the system that we have in UK any day of the week.
Well, I would guess because it's the vested interest. I don't know whether you've heard of a guy on YouTube. He's got a channel called Libertarian Views, Scotty M.
Oh yeah,
You know him?
yeah, I'm a friend of his. Yeah.
He was one of the key people speaking about exactly what you're speaking
Oh,
about.
nice.
So he was one of the ones who helped wake me up to
Okay.
a lot of what was happening in healthcare in this country, because very few people speak about it because they're vested interests. I mean,
Right.
you've got all the people who work in these industries, right? You know, if people start taking care of themselves, there aren't going to be as many jobs for nurses or doctors necessarily.
Well, there is, but they're going to be in the new healthcare industry, not which actually puts human well-being first. The thing is, what you say about giving someone a test is exactly right. If we could turn the incentives on its head and the healthcare system made more money when you're healthy and less money when you were sick, then there would be a massive incentive to find out what the right food was for each person, find out how to detoxify each person, find out how to make people healthier. What I say in my book is, imagine I'm your financial advisor and I say, I've got a great contract for you, right? I'll make money whatever happens. If your account goes up, if your account goes down. But if your account goes down, I'll make more money than if it goes up. But don't worry, if I bankrupt you, I won't get paid at all. So actually, my incentive is to keep your account as low as possible without bankrupting you. And that's exactly what's happening in healthcare. Their incentive is to keep you sick for as long as possible without killing you. And what do we see? A massive rise in chronic diseases that can last 10, 20, 30 years. So it just shows, it's proof of the concept in economics that a system will tend to turn out the results that it's incentivized to turn out.
Well, this is why I'm interested in the free market system, because what you can get in a free market system with private insurance is you will get more people going to the gym, because you often get subsidized or totally free
Yeah.
gym membership. You sign up, they're like, yeah, totally
Yeah.
free. Go down, no pressure, no sort of worrying. Oh, do I unsubscribe because I'm not going down? It's already completely free on us. Go down to the gym, go and
Yeah.
exercise.
They'll pay you if you don't go to a gym class. They'll charge you if you don't go.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to go to 4 gym classes a week to keep your bonus on your premiums. But if you only go to 3, you'll pay slightly more.
Yeah. And it's only a little bit more, but it will make a difference.
Yeah, it'll make a difference because you go, well, you know, if I don't go to my gym class, then my insurance company is going to charge me 15 quid. You know, that's better than having to pay 10, 15 quid for a gym class. Yeah. But people need community to change because people indulge in their bad habits in community with their family, they drink with their friends. So it's no good the doctor saying, well, you know, stop smoking, drink less, stop eating junk food, lose a bit of weight and take more exercise. Now off you go. That's never going to work. It might work for a small percentage of people. But what we need to do is have systems that bring people together to improve their habits together, to exercise together, to make friends together while they're getting more healthy. And I believe that would occur in a free market system or something like that, where you had your healthcare provider was there to keep you healthy. Because if they lose money when you get sicker, then they want to keep you healthy. So they'll have the best side. Oh, that guy wants to exercise more, but he can't motivate themselves. Well, then they'll get the best psychologists in the world to work on how to motivate them, because that's how they'll make money, by making people better instead of worse.
And place bonuses there. Okay, this guy is no longer coming back because he's been taken care of, because he's now healthy. He's passing all his tests each year. Congratulations. Here's a bonus for every person who's signed up who's not coming back to you.
Right. Yeah, we don't even know what that system would look like. That's one of the things that's difficult about having the free market position. Because see, people who think the government can do something is like, well, what are you going to do about this problem? Well, we'll decree that this is the solution. Whereas when we talk about free markets, we say, I don't know what the system's going to look like, but I know that based on the incentives, the best people in the world will be working on solutions. And because the solutions will compete with each other, it's like a sieve for good ideas. We'll find the gems by prospecting, by panning. Over time, the best ideas will win out.
Wonderful. Do you think the problem is that we are in such a regulated system at the moment that it's very difficult to set up an alternative
Right.
system? Because if you tried setting something like this up, there would be a lot of impediments. Like
Right.
if a doctor wants to prescribe, even simple things like fasting or a change of diet,
Yeah,
they
amazing.
could then lose their license because they did not just
Yeah.
push these drugs on someone.
I know people who, because researching my book, I spoke to a bunch of people who were incurable and cured themselves. One of them cured themselves of colitis. His doctor would say to him, "How come all my other patients are getting worse and you're getting better?" And he said, "Well, that's because I don't take your poisonous drug, doctor." And at one point, his doctor said to him, "Look, Paul, off the record, I really support what you're doing, but I can't recommend it to my other patients because I'm liable." So fundamentally, we've created a system with a narrow funnel. People work relentlessly 70, 80-hour weeks when they're on residency to become a doctor for no money at all. At the end of it, they want to pay back their student loans. They don't want to know about they are indoctrinated into a system, and they've invested so much. And even if they don't even, one of the most common response from doctors when their patients start healing naturally is, "Well, whatever you're doing, keep on doing it." But they don't want to know what they're doing, because if they know, then it creates responsibility on them, and they don't want to. They don't want to know about it, and they've created a system where they incentivize people to put their heads in the sand, unfortunately. So we really need to take our health back into our own hands, and this is an amazing event because there's some amazing naturopathic thinkers here, and I've seen these people curing diseases that we were told were incurable. Um, and I guess we just need to have enough examples that they can't ignore us anymore.
So just speak to as many people, then gain as much attention via those people, get the word out to the point that politicians start to recognize it and finally get out of people's way.
Well, if something can't go on forever, it won't go on forever. And the current levels of spending on healthcare, with the waiting lists growing longer and longer, is unsustainable. The question is, will people have the ability to wake up to the fact that it's the way we pay for healthcare, as in the socialized system, that's creating the problem, or not? Or will they blame it on, oh, they're privatizing the NHS and all these kind of
Please,
Yeah.
abolish the NHS.
Yeah,
Please.
but you need to give people an alternative. And to me, like I write about it in my book, Singapore's system is a saleable alternative. We can put money in a healthcare savings account, and this has the shop around effect. We can shop around for the best healthcare at the best price. That creates competition on quality, an upward pressure on quality and a downward pressure on price. And because we're saying, look, Singapore's implemented this very successfully, we can actually sell that to people. People, wow, they spend 60% on healthcare of what we do, and they live 6 or 7 years longer. Amazing. Why don't we do that here? I think that's something that we can get across to people.
Do you think that a lot of this stems from a complete and utter ignorance of economics and
Oh, yeah.
indoctrination in the opposite fashion into socialism?
Yeah, absolutely. People lose. See, if the government made ball bearings for steering wheels, people would say, "Well, without the government, how would you even get cars? Because we couldn't make steering wheels." As soon as the government provides something, people lose their imagination. It's all this way. It's really difficult because people understand that the reason why the government puts a tax on alcohol is because if the price of alcohol is higher, less people will buy it, or they'll buy less of it. And yet you say to them, well, why wouldn't the same be true of the minimum wage? If you put a minimum price on labor, there'll be less jobs. What
But
you're dealing
more than
with, yeah,
that, it actually targets the most vulnerable
exactly.
people. who aren't skilled enough
Right.
to be able to earn £10 an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah.
And that person may be worth £8 an hour,
Right.
but they're not going to bring them in and train them up for 6 months,
Yeah.
losing £2 an hour for
Yeah.
every hour that they're working till
Right.
they're worth that point.
Right, exactly. Why am I going to employ someone who's going to lose me money? So the thing is, what you're dealing with is ideology here. Well, I'm a good person, so I support minimum wage, and I don't really want to believe in whatever you're saying, so I need to find a reason why it's not true. And the same is true for NHS. It's an ideology. How we tackle that, I really don't know. I love economic theory. I think it's so elegant. I think it has explanatory power. It helps us understand the world we're living in. But at this stage, we need to offer demonstrations and bring these to light. Look, this really works in the real world, because you can't unsee something, you know? So I don't know, it's both. You know, you always see a knight with a sword and a shield. I think we need the theory, but we also need practical examples.
Nice. So tell me, who are your favourites?
My favorite economists. Oh, well, I mean, obviously Ludwig von Mises.
Yes.
I mean, he's my bro. I must have read the book Liberalism 4 times, and same for Theory and History. And the elegance of his understanding of the most, like, he'll have one page which has 2 paragraphs in it that has an amazing point. Like, wow, that's mind blowing. But he just says it as a wee aside. Oh, and also, if you've ever thought of that. Secondly, Bastiat, the French economist.
You read The Law?
Yeah.
Oh, so
The funny thing is, that's the most popular, but that's one of my least favorite, Bastiat.
Oh.
I love his, because a lot of the historical references are outdated. He uses humor. He's so humanitarian. He puts the point across so judiciously. But he also says, what about this counter argument? Well, the answer to that is this. And it was thought he was just a popularizer for a long time, but really scholars have seen there's quite a lot of original arguments in Bastiat that haven't been seen in early economists as well. So he was an original thinker as well as a great communicator.
It's a pity the French don't follow him now.
It's so very true. And if you read my books, which I recommend you do, you'll see that I'm all about the device. I always try and find an interesting way of communicating something, because a lot of people say, well, I know the pharmaceuticals industry is rubbish already. That's fine. I think people will enjoy the tone of my book and the way that I use interesting, fun stories and examples. And it gives you interesting ways to discuss the information with your friends and family, because it's not just like, I guess you'll have to see it to believe it.
Well, it's grammar, logic, rhetoric, isn't it? The
Yeah,
trivium.
and
So it's about how you put it across.
I have an advantage over most people who write about economics and things like that, in that I was a theatre critic for 10, 12 years. So I got very good at having a punchy style and summarizing a lot of findings in a short amount of space. And someone on Amazon reviewed it, and he was like, Anthony's like so short, sharp, and relentless. Topic, boom, 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 boom. Here's everything you need to know. Topic, boom. But I want to bring levity and humor, because people have a short attention span. It shouldn't be a burden to read a book. You should be able to read a few pages of that on your lunch break and go, oh, great, I can't wait to read a little bit more whenever I've got time, because it's not hard work. And I've always got as much praise on my tone, on my style of writing as content, which I find really gratifying, because I work so hard on the way that I present the material.
The big question is, have you read Hopper?
Yeah, I've read Hopper. I actually met Hopper. I was at his conference in Turkey, but it's like, I've never spoken about this publicly, but it was like one of these things, like in a dream where you want to wake up, but you can't wake up because it's not a dream, it's real. My baggage got lost. And so I came in, and I think he was a bit annoyed at how some of the younger people in the conference didn't dress well. And I came in with my stuff, and he asked me if I could dress a bit better. And it was so embarrassing. It's like, friggin' hell, it's like you meet the king, right? And Yeah, my baggage got lost. Like, and I'd already tried to go to the supermarket to get a shirt and stuff like that. It was so funny. It's like, but no, now I laugh at it, and I think it's actually hilarious that that happened.
Hey, that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's really traditional, isn't
He,
he?
in some ways, yeah, he's got a wicked sense of humor as well. But I've not spent like my friend Stephen Kinsella is a really good friends with Hopper and told me a lot about them. But I've not spent that much time around him. But he's known for his dry wit, and he's yeah. I love his book, A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism. It's a very easy read and very educational. And of course, his book, Democracy That
The God
God
that
That
failed.
Failed, presents some uncomfortable truths. But if I was him, it's got such an amazing name. I'd take that book and take it to a popular writer and say, can you rewrite this book for mass market and have another version of it, Democracy, the God That Fails, that's not so heady and economic, but gets all of the points across, but in a way that normal people communicate. Because it could be a bestseller. He could sell 1 million copies
Why
if he
don't
did
you?
that. I don't really have the time or the energy to do that. I'm trying to write my own books, but I would love. See, do you know what? I'll tell you something. If I was fast, I would do it in a second. I'd love to do it, but I'm really slow. Because I
Theatre
edit.
critic, you've only got a small
I
column
know,
in which to put everything,
and
so
I'm
you labour.
painstaking. The thing is, I can write a theatre review in 20 minutes now, but it would take me hours when I first started. But this stuff, I don't know. I can't let go of my perfectionism. It's like I feel every sentence. When I write like I talk, but I want it to be like you left the butter out the fridge and the toast is piping hot out the toaster and it spreads like whoosh. That's how it should be to read my stuff. If it's work, I'm not succeeding.
In uncertain times, one asset continues to rise: gold. More than just a precious metal, gold is a globally recognized tier 1 asset with no counterparty risk. Its history of preserving value during turbulent periods makes it a trusted store of wealth. With central banks and nation states buying record vaults, it's clear gold is more than just an investment, it's financial security. Secure yours today with Knights Bullion. Visit knightsbullion.com or call 01789 266 595.
So, do you think people raising their kids need to teach them about economics then?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Because it's not in the
yeah.
state
The
schools.
thing is, it's hard to break the ideology once it's got there. Yeah, I mean, people need. The thing is, economics is elegant and it makes so much sense. It's so interesting. And it's amazing that it got the name the dismal science because it's so beautiful and elegant. It has explanatory power. It makes the world comprehensible. And
Have you read Defending the Undefendable by Walter
yeah,
Block?
yeah. But it always annoys me because I think it should be called Defending the Indefensible. I actually listened to the audiobook of it during lockdown. When I came out my house, I was writing a lot, and when I needed to clear my head, I'd walk around the block listening to Walter Block. Yeah.
I've got to say,
It's a
it's
great
good.
book.
And because he goes through all of the different scenarios. He
Yeah.
says, okay, this thing, the pimp, the ticket scalp, the pawnbroker, a drug dealer, or literally he goes through all of them because he's got first book, second book. And he says, okay, you think this is the worst thing in the world. Now I'm going to explain why the government shouldn't be involved with it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's perfect every
yeah,
time.
yeah. It's a really good book. Yeah, you clearly share my passion, but that's why it's amazing that it's so hard to get these ideas across to people because it makes sense. It's like people respond to incentives. If you tax productive behavior to pay for unproductive behavior, you're going to make productive behaviors less desirable and unproductive behaviors more desirable, which means less people are going to be productive and more people are going to be unproductive, which means we'll have less stuff, which means we'll all be poorer. It's so
It
sensible.
really is so simple.
So simple. What I don't understand, you mentioned this like indoctrination into socialism. What I really don't understand is why people don't get this very simple argument. See, if only one person is allowed to provide a service and everyone else is banned from it, how could that service possibly be good? If Starbucks were the only people allowed to sell coffee, you can bet the coffee would be really expensive and very poor quality because people would still want coffee.
And that's
But
summarised by power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
right. So the great thing about the market is I don't have to vote to, I don't need to write to the papers. I don't need to organize a focus group. If I don't like Starbucks, I can go to Nero. If I don't like Nero, I'll go to a local place, you know, the espresso bar or whatever. I don't have to campaign at all. I just take my money elsewhere. And that creates a diversity of services, but it also creates an upward pressure on the quality of services and a downward pressure on price because they're competing for custom. And I just don't understand how people don't get the fact that the government's not competing for customs. They can force you to pay for services at gunpoint, whether you like it or not. How can that possibly result in a better quality of services? And the answer is it can.
Well, taxation is theft, isn't it? What's funny is I actually tutor economics to
Amazing.
some kids. It's great, but the unfortunate thing is I'm tutoring I'm tutoring to get them through the GCSE exam. So I tell them how it is, and then at certain points I then need to say, okay, but this is the way that they want it phrased in the
Right.
exam, even if it is absolute rubbish. And you go, consumers, whose interests do consumers operate in? They're rational, self-interest actors. Okay, they operate in their own interest. Producers, whose interests do they operate in? Rational, self-interested actors. Again, themselves. Government works to protect the
Do they actually
producers.
say that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like, no. The government works in the government's interest. Because they sort of have this pretense that
There's
government...
no such thing as an impartial referee. There's only players in the game. There's no referees.
And that's why you have a free market, because then you can choose which provider. But with government, people believe genuinely, and some people genuinely believe the government are the people. And it's like, no, the government is a specific group of people who control the state, who have this power over you and all the rest of us. And you keep wondering, why? People say, why do we keep doing this? Like, it's not we. It's a specific group of oligarchs who are doing everything.
Yeah. The average argument with a lefty devolves to this. Without the government, there would be this problem. And then you go, but look, the government doesn't help with that problem. Here's a bunch of ways that government policies make that problem worse. And the lefty goes, yeah, I agree with that, but it would still be even worse without the government. And it's a little bit embarrassing. It's shocking that people are not able to get out of that view. But, you mentioned Mises, and I think one of his really good observations was that the leftists only see people in their capacity as producers. They don't take into account the fact that every producer is also a consumer. So they can go, oh, well, capitalism is really hard on workers because companies want to pay them as little as possible, not realizing that all of these pressures mean that goods and services are cheaper. So in their capacity as consumers, the same people who are workers are also consumers. So they get a bunch of stuff much cheaper. So in a free market, if your wage stays the same or even lower slightly, but the price of goods and services is coming down at a faster rate, you're richer, even if your paycheck's exactly the same. And that happened for the first 100 years, at least, of America. The price of all goods and services came down. That should have continued to happen because we've invented so much technology, computers, AI, that can do a lot of work. So why aren't we much richer? Why aren't we working 16-hour weeks?
Fiat currency, which is supporting the global American empire, and which is based on the petrodollar, which is based purely upon violence, and the United States running around the world, right, with a machine gun and a few nukes, saying if you don't sell in our currency, so our currency's worth something, we will destroy you.
The best research is that something like without government intervention in the housing market, your mortgage or your rent would be half of what it is now. Imagine how rich everyone in this country would be if their rent or mortgage was half of what it is now.
Well, it's the mass migration, isn't it? This is an argument amongst liberals and libertarians. Personally, I believe in individual property rights as much as possible, and the next best thing after that is going to be some sort of local and then national property rights. The idea of getting rid of our borders and just having these people come onto our property, right, and start, having their separate communities, raising their kids on our property, using our property. It is an invasion. This mass migration, they've just completely got rid of the idea that we own this land. They're literally stealing our country. There's a great theft out from under our feet, and that is what's pushed the housing, prices through the roof.
I'm not really sure that that's the main or only factor. I mean, the main thing is it's bloody hard for anyone but 2 or 3 companies to build in Britain. They just won't let people build more houses. But it's not that it's not a factor. The migration, I'm not really for open borders, just mostly it seems like a cautious approach is the correct way to go.
But from first principles, you have property rights, surely.
I can't philosophically see any reason why someone shouldn't be able to cross from Mexico into America, apart from the fact that then they're eligible for free schooling, free this, free that. You can force people at gunpoint to pay. And that really, if we want to stop mass migration, we need to get rid of trade barriers with the poorest countries in the world so that they can sell us cheap products. We can send our money over there. Their living standards will rise, and poor people in this country will have access to cheap goods, and that will raise their living standards. But we seem to be doing the opposite of that. We seem to be going to places and bombing them and then creating migrant crisis.
You say it's about the bombing. I think that's the standard line. I've heard this from so many people.
It's only one, yeah.
But I consider it the least issue. I think the main thing is that people just want what we've got. There's.
But can you blame them? That's the thing. That's why I find the migration issue hard.
I can because I would not just go over and invade someone else's country myself. So I'm holding myself to the same standard. Look, I'm a bit of a liberal imperialist. So if you've got a country that does not in any way uphold natural rights, and you go in and you make it a province of your empire, and you bring in juries, right, and you actually introduce the concept of a free market, then I think that would be and you're abolishing slavery. I think that's a perfectly good thing because you have to weigh it up and see what's better.
I mean, right.
But unless you're doing get out of my country.
I'd love to have an in-depth conversation about it. It's such an interesting topic.
We started out on farmer, and now we're talking about restoring the Raj.
I can go on because I feel like the migrant issue is difficult because I feel compassionate towards people who are who are just through no fault of their own born into horrible conditions. I wouldn't want that to happen to me. We would have lost Rand and Mises if there wasn't open immigration to America, since both of them escaped authoritarian dictatorships. However, I do, like you say, you have to take into account everyone's wants and needs. People have a right to, say they grew up in a community where everyone spoke English, and now they're getting old, and everywhere they go, the bus driver and everyone on the bus and the corner shop and aren't speaking English anymore. Those people have rights too. But if you speak about that, obviously you're a racist or something like that. I think the problem is we can't have an honest discussion. But I don't think it's so simple.
We're going to be a minority very soon.
That is possibly very true. What the thing is, I don't know what to do about it because we can't have this discussion without people flipping a lid. These issues: Israel, immigration, abortion, and one or
NHS.
two NHS. People just short circuit. They just lose it. I can have a conversation with you about it. The liberal imperialism. That's a really interesting question as well. In theory, I guess I'm not against it. I don't think it's fair to force people through the tax system to pay to send armies abroad. But if people want to volunteer to the army and go and spread Western values if you could stop slavery, if you could create better institutions.
Well, I mean, you basically get the payoff from the imperialism, as we did. We went out, we expanded our empire. Our empire then becomes a massive market. We're developing the countries. It's great for us, great for our economy.
Well, I mean, it wasn't really great for everyone in Britain because most of the because they were forced to pay for it through taxes on crops. So poor people in Britain had to pay taxes to fund imperial adventures abroad, which did obviously benefit the class that the capitalist class that owned those ventures, but it didn't really benefit poor people in Britain that much.
Well, I mean, it drove the Industrial Revolution. And if you look at the Industrial Revolution as the best thing that's happened to mankind, other than maybe the Enlightenment and the discovery of these liberal values, it's what dragged everyone out of poverty, because people sort of say that, the welfare state brought people out of poverty. No, the welfare state came after people got out of poverty. They suddenly went, we're a little bit affluent, right, let's get comfy and, just burn everything down.
Well, the thing is, when you're poor, they can't tax you 10% because you'll be like, you can't tax me 10%, you're taking food out my child's mouth. But when you start to get a comfortable income, they can tax you 40% because you're like, well, I'm still all right. I'm still doing pretty well. So that's what happened with that. You got the Industrial Revolution, people got richer and richer, and their tolerance for being taxed grew higher and higher because their living standards were higher. Oh, maybe I can get a free this. Maybe I can get a free that. Oh, they want to give us free education. Why not? Why shouldn't I get something for free? Well, they're going to need to tax us for that. And they don't actually realize that all of these things would have been provided more cheaply by the market. Not only that, without the welfare state, when the government takes on responsibilities that used to be provided by community, they remove the need for community. Now no one knows their neighbors anymore because you don't have to. It's not like if you come in a hard time, you need to go to your neighbor and ask for a cup of milk. Instead, the government's your neighbor, but they'll send you a check, but they can't find you a job. A check is not community, but because people rely on the government for a check, they feel like they no longer need community, and it's such a corrupting factor in society.
It's much better to rely on a human being and also human beings are more discerning. The government can't decide whether you're the sort of person who's going to sort your life out, whereas the people around you can say, here's a bit of cash, I can help you out because I know you and I can make a decision. Right. The government's just a faceless bureaucracy. Yeah. They are going to hand out your money, my money. Okay, it's essentially their money because they've stolen it. Ours by right, but theirs de facto to people who do not deserve it. And what is it? Like something like 70% of Somalians are in council houses.
I wouldn't be surprised. Here's the thing. It's like people say, how would you provide for the poor in the free market? Well, first of all, what poor? We wouldn't be printing money, so your money wouldn't lose its value. House prices would be half of what they are now, so we'd have way, way, way more money to spend. There'd be way more jobs because there wouldn't be so much regulation.
It'd be less than half after deportations. After deportations, it would be less.
Right. Wow. I don't. Yeah, we're getting into controversy. I wonder how you would carry that out.
Enoch Powell had the perfect solution. What you do is you actually offer an incentive for people to give up their residency. Obviously, sensibly, you pay it once they touch down in the other country. The government probably arrange for the flights, buy the cheapest flights possible to get them back to their home country. You could possibly even give them an advance just before they get on the plane that they pick up because you've got border security. You've actually got staff at a desk who could, walk them through and say, okay, here is your advance or something like that. Maybe give them £100 or something before to get to the airport. Sure, you could do any of that. I've worked alongside a huge amount of migrants who've come over here. They thought the streets were paved with gold, and they've realised it's not. But then they've got sunk cost fallacy, and they're already here, and they've got a flat. And what would they do going back home, starting all over again? You give people something anywhere between £2,000 and £5,000 per person to naff off, they will, and it will save you so much money because the people who would accept that would be the people who are actually the biggest drain on the entire system. Whereas some migrant who's making, like 70K a year, and you say, oh, I'll give you, like $3,000 if you leave the country. They'll go,
No, thanks, I've got a job. Yeah.
exactly. So what you do, completely voluntary system, and obviously there's all the slander about Enoch Powell. I was wearing my Enoch Powell T-shirt yesterday.
Yeah, anyone who's poking at the truth is going to. But this is the problem. It's not that people have different ideas. We can't even discuss it because you're a bad person. So you should be able to say these things, and we should be able to think, would that work? Can we have a reasonable conversation about it? I would like some liberal imperialism here in Britain. I want us to colonize ourselves and go back to the Enlightenment, go back to Adam Smith. Until we can do that, talking about proselytizing around the world talk is cheap,
Well, you say that. So if we're gonna, imperialize, we're gonna need, carrot. We're also gonna need stick. Should we start tooling up, exercising our right to bear arms?
I think we should. I think you've got a right to bear arms. I think self-defense is the most basic right. You've got the right to your own life. But somehow, again, it's like ideology trumps reality. You go, look, there's data that show when women are allowed to conceal and carry, the number of rapes goes down precipitously. I don't know, like 90%. Because a rapist doesn't know what woman's got a gun. Even if 1 in 5 women, 1 in 10 women are carrying a gun, the rapist doesn't know if she's got a gun or not.
Exactly.
And yet,
And this is what I tell all of the females I know. I say, why aren't you carrying a knife? Like, why?
Because the government made it illegal because they want you to depend on them.
But you could. This is the thing. Like, even if people have got this whole thing, no, knives are illegal. It's like, even firstly, no. What the government is doing is repugnant. The legal term is repugnant. Okay, because we have the right under the Bill of Rights in our Constitution. But even by their diktats, you can have a folding non-locking blade under 3 inches. So you can have a knife on you. But people have got this weird sort of paranoia, right? When I tell people I carry a knife, they're like, oh, what do you need a knife for? I'm like, well, what do you...
myself.
I say, no, simpler than that, right? That's like...
What do you need dessert for? You don't need dessert.
It's like...
But I like eating dessert. Well, I like carrying a knife.
But what do you need all the knives in your kitchen for, right? You go out, you want to cut some food. Oh my God, the amount of times they don't give you knives in a fish and chip shop. Have you got that?
Right.
And they just give you a fork and how am I meant to eat with this? Right? Simple little bits and pieces, opening packages, everything. Right? But fundamentally, you do have the right to carry anything that's a weapon, so long as you don't use it against someone else.
Well, here's a concept for you, because we're basically talking about how we've been domesticated, and even your own self-defense has to be mediated by government. I think the agenda has been to remove anything out of education which brings people into contact with the world. Anything like shop, carpentry, home ec, anything that involves a skill. Like, see if you're a sociologist, you can make up crap theories that aren't true and still have a job. But see if you're an architect, you need to build according to the laws of nature, otherwise your building won't stand. I think there's been a deliberate move not to bring children into contact with reality and teach them stuff that has objective answers where you need to follow the laws of nature. Because when you learn anything, even playing darts or salsa dancing, anything that's objective, it trains the mind that you need to conform to nature. But see if they give you a bunch of conceptual information, it's the teacher who tells you whether you're right or wrong. It's not about the laws of nature. It's what Nathaniel Brandon, a student of Rand, called social metaphysics. You gain your sense of reality. So this is my own theory, that they've removed anything practical from our schooling, whereas in days gone by, a 15-year-old could be the captain of a ship. There were army generals that were 18, 19 years old. How competent do you need to be? So anything, people need to go out and learn real stuff. It doesn't matter what it is, but it needs to be something where reality decides whether you're right or wrong, not other people. And then we won't be so slavish to the collective.
Well, I've got to say, it's been an absolute
Yeah.
pleasure so far. Can you tell me how it's been being down here at the People's Reset?
Oh man, I am so honored and touched to be a part of this. I had my talk yesterday and I ran a workshop today. Derek and Dan Aston Gregory are like such bros. Derek bros. I spoke in Morelia, Mexico in January, and that was such an event. It draws such an amazing crowd. And this is like even blowing my mind, these 3 days, the quality of people who come to these events. Like if you can get to these things, you should get to them. Don't worry about money. You can always make more money. The quality of human being and connection and contacts you make at these events is phenomenal. I'm so lucky to have not just come here, let alone have had the chance to speak. And I get to meet lovely people like you.
Oh, thank
Who
you.
challenge who challenge me to go, even my own sense of, oh, whoa, we're going into controversial territory here. Can you really forcibly deport people? Yeah, I'd love to speak to you again.
No, start it out voluntary, and well, let's just start from there. And if we manage to solve the problems, the good ones,
Yeah.
decide that they're gonna, integrate, and that means not living segregated.
I know you don't want to have little segregated
marrying
communities.
into the tribe, because fundamentally we are a tribal species, and what really concerns me is people just don't marry into the tribe. Like they continue marrying out.
I started learning Spanish because it was in Latin America. So if you come to a country, you should definitely learn the language at least. People should not live in closed communities where they only speak to people of their ethnic group in other countries. It's very sad when this happens. The saddest thing is we can't talk about it. I think we need to look at low-hanging fruit. The healthcare system, if we fixed that, we'd save so much money. We'd really improve living standards. I think the same goes for free trade, printing money, housing regulations. All these things are things we can say to people, this would make you richer, appeal to people's self-interest. I don't know how humanity is going to get out of this one, but I guess a few more of these conversations might help.
Well, yeah, and as Heinlein says, violence is the one supreme authority from which all other authority derives.
You heard it here first, folks.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, I do Be Yourself and Love It podcast. It's a personal development podcast with an emphasis on what we can change in our own lives and how we can act in the world to make the world a better place. Slightly libertarian underpinnings. I'm also a therapist. That's my real job. Libertarian advocacy is kind of like my side hustle. So if you think I would be a good person for you to speak to, a good counselor, you can go to beyourselfandloveit.com. And I also Substack, psychosocial.substack.com.
Well, thank you very much, man.
Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
Great chat. And maybe if you do read the book, we can do this again.
Thank you for watching this video. Please consider supporting our journalism on Patreon for about £3 a month, which is about 70p a week. It helps us cover the costs of our journalism and keep doing what we do. On our Patreon, we've got loads of exclusive content for people who support us. We've got behind the scenes with our podcast guests. We've got other behind the scenes. We've got book recommendations. We've got word associations. And we've also got bits and pieces from our work with Defiance Records. So please do support us, and it enables us to give you more journalism and keep telling people the truth. A big shout out as well to our platinum, gold, silver and bronze level patrons. Also, a massive shout out to our gold and platinum level patrons, RIBM and Simon W, for supporting what we do more than anyone else. Thank you so much for your support and enabling us to do what we do. Thank you. Check out this trailer coming up for our new series on Resistance GB, 1,000 Words, with portrait artist Jake Fern as he paints and discusses with fantastic guests from the freedom movement, starting with David Icke. 1,000 Words with David Icke coming up on the 17th of December.
Some of the key figures in the movement as you've never seen them before, painted by me, Jake Fern, with half of my brain concentrating on making a painting and half of my brain concentrating on having a conversation. Do I succeed at either or both? You be the judge. Tune in on Tuesday the 17th of December for the first instalment of Resistance GB's 1,000 Words with David Icke.
Oh, there you go. Oh, that's far better than I thought. Where's good? Hello. This is great.